All right, let's get right into it. We're going to take a look at a hidden economy, a massive multi-billion-dollar industry that pretty much operates in the shadows. And right now, it is getting slammed by a perfect storm. We're talking about two of the biggest economic forces of our time hitting it all at once. And the results, well, they are pretty dramatic. So that's the big question we're tackling here, right? What really happens when these two juggernauts, AI and inflation, collide inside an industry like this? Because what we're seeing, it isn't just a simple downturn. No, it's a complete reshaping of a market that, believe it or not, involves more than 500,000 people. The best way to think about this is like a pincer movement in a battle. On one side, you have this digital threat, artificial intelligence, and it's quietly eating away at the value of one of the industry's most important services. Then, coming from the other side, you've got the very real, very physical threat of inflation, which is just straight up eliminating its customer base. So before we see exactly how these pincers are closing in, we really need to understand the battlefield itself. And I think the sheer scale of this invisible market is probably going to surprise you. Okay, so what kind of numbers are we talking about? Well, based on a whole lot of research and digital analysis, the best midpoint estimate for active, in-person workers in the US is over 500,000. Let that sink in. This is not some tiny niche corner of the economy. It's a huge workforce that's operating almost entirely out of sight, and because of that, it's also largely unprotected. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The market isn't just one big blob. You've got the super high end and the low end, and they each make up about 20% of the pie. But look at that massive piece in the middle, 60%. The vast majority of this industry sits right there, in the mid-tier. And you have to remember that because that's the exact segment that's about to get squeezed into oblivion. All right, let's talk about that first pincer, the subtle but incredibly powerful impact of AI. Now, it's not replacing what you might think it is. It's replacing something that for many clients is just as valuable. And this is the key idea you have to grasp, the companionship premium. You see, for a huge number of clients, booking a session isn't just about the physical aspect. It's about having a conversation, making a connection. It's something the industry calls the girlfriend experience, or GFE. They are paying a premium for that emotional connection. And this is where AI crashes the party. These incredibly sophisticated chatbots can now offer that feeling of connection, that companionship, 24/7 for what, a few bucks a month? It is a direct, dirt cheap competitor for any client whose main reason for booking was that girlfriend experience. And this isn't just a theory. You can see the real-world impact right here. The data shows a substitution rate between 5 and 8%. That means for every 100 guys looking for companionship, maybe up to 8 of them are now just turning to AI instead. And as you can see, that translates into an estimated loss of over 34,000 roles in the industry. That's the first pincer making its mark. Now, let's turn to the second pincer. And honestly, this one is way more powerful. This isn't about fancy technology. It's about the simple, brutal reality of a tanking economy. Just think about this. Since 2020, the real purchasing power for this industry's core customer, your average middle-class guy, has dropped by about 25%. That's a massive hit. The fun money, the discretionary cash that would go towards a $300 or $500 session, poof, it's gone. It's being spent on rent and groceries now. This all ties into an economic idea called income elasticity of demand. It sounds a little academic, but I promise it's simple. This service is a luxury good. And what happens with luxury goods? When people's incomes drop even a little bit, their spending on those luxuries drops a ton. It's one of the very first things they cut from the budget. So what do these clients do? Well, they don't necessarily stop completely. Instead, they trade down. That $1,000 trip to a legal brothel in Nevada? That's off the table. Instead, he's looking for a $300 local option. And you can see how this creates a huge shift, pulling all that money and demand away from the high end and just flooding the mid and low tiers with guys looking for a cheaper deal. So let's recap. We've got AI devaluing one part of the service, and we've got inflation wiping out the customer base for another. So what happens when we put these two destructive forces together? Okay, here's the math that brings it all into focus. You start with our baseline number, 525,000 workers. Then you subtract the nearly 35,000 roles that are displaced because of AI's attack on that companionship premium. After that, you subtract the much, much bigger number, almost 95,000, who are being forced out simply because inflation has made their clients disappear. And that leaves us with this,
a projected net exit of around 130,000 workers from the industry by 2026. I mean, that is staggering. We're talking about nearly a quarter of the entire workforce just gone in the span of a few years.
But the story doesn't stop there, because this shakeout isn't just about the numbers going down, it's about who's left standing. And the new landscape looks very, very different from the old one. This is probably the most important takeaway of the whole thing. The market isn't shrinking evenly across the board. No, it's being hollowed out. That huge middle tier we talked about earlier, it's collapsing. And it's leaving only the two extreme ends of the spectrum. So on one side, you have the ultra high end. These providers are serving the top 1%, guys who are basically immune to inflation. Then on the complete opposite side, you have the low end. And that part of the market is actually seeing a surge in business from all those clients who have traded down and are now looking for cheaper, faster, high turnover sessions. The middle ground has just vanished. And what this means is that the single most endangered person in this new economy is what the research calls the middle-class escort. Her target client, that professional guy with a good but not insane income, is the person who's been hit the hardest by inflation. Her entire business model has effectively disappeared overnight.
And for the workers who are trying to survive in that collapsing middle, the financial reality is just grim. This quote from the source material really says it all. Because they can't raise prices on a customer base that's shrinking, their rates are literally stuck where they were in 2015. When you factor in inflation, that's a 30% pay cut. They're working harder for so much less money. Which, of course, leaves us with one last, pretty haunting question. As this hidden economy gets violently reshaped by these powerful forces, and as workers get squeezed between fewer clients and plunging wages, you have to ask, in this new, much harsher landscape, who is it that will ultimately pay the highest price for this great shakeup?